Hi guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Callum and I like to talk about music, films and pretty much anything media related. So with the release of the upcoming Pistol series directed by Danny Boyle, which is a biopic mini-series of the Sex Pistols history, I'd take a look at another Sex Pistols biopic from 1986, SID Nancy, directed by Alex Cox. SID Nancy didn't go on to be this extremely well-known classic like Trainspotting, for example. However, it is one of my favourite British films. It's a film that seems to get a lot of hate in the Sex Pistols fan base because of its inaccuracy. John Lydon himself has pretty much said that this film is a piece of shit. It's going to take a while doing this because I have to try.
I just love how you break out a character.
I have to try memorize, not directly look at the camera.
We should have cue cards. I should have done it behind the camera.
And I definitely understand a lot of these criticisms. I mean, I would even consider it a stretch to call this film a traditional biopic. It's not based off any sort of biography. It doesn't really have any of the band members directly involved with its production. Instead, it's about a relationship between two punk icons who seemingly never really hit their full potential. It's about them as people and the elements surrounding their relationship and not so the music. It mostly comes from director Alex Cox's own theories and interpretations around what happened, kind of based on the general facts that people know about the Sex Pistols. So you have all the most famous incidents like the American tour and the Bill Grundy show being referenced, along with everything that happens in the Chelsea Hotel. But like I said, this didn't have any direct involvement with the people involved. So it mostly just comes from his own fictional theories. For those of you who are unaware, Sid Vicious was the replacement for Glenn Matlock in the Sex Pistols as the bass player. He was chosen not for his musical capabilities, but more for his image and for his kind of popularity in the punk scene. Nancy Spungen was a groupie, and this film kind of tells the story about how they came together and their eventually demise. To call this film an accurate interpretation of events would be inaccurate. This is especially evident in the questionable way that Nancy's death in the end of the film is represented. To this day, the murder has never been actually solved, so in the film we are greeted to Cox's theory of Sid stabbing Nancy intentionally in a fit of drug-fueled rage. It actually happened, and it does pose as being a very dramatic and intense way to end the film. But like I said, this isn't fact, this is mere interpretation and theorising. Maybe the film would have been better off with a more direct involvement from other members of the band and friends of Sid Vicious who were around at the time, and if the film focused more on the facts and less on trying to turn the real life events to this sort of fictionalised fantasy, especially since certain people were pretty much made up for the film in order for the plot structure to work. So despite the obvious flaws that this film definitely has, I still would consider this film to be an incredibly powerful, dark and entertaining piece of filmmaking. It's a strange dilemma that I have with this film because as a biopic it doesn't really work on any sort of level, but as a darkly humorous drama about a toxic relationship it works extremely well. I think the difference between Sid and Nancy and a film like Bohemian Rhapsody is, despite both films being kind of inaccurate, Sid and Nancy works a lot better than Bohemian Rhapsody because it actually has the balls to portray these people objectively. They don't sugarcoat events and they present these people in a very haunting and visceral way, unlike Bohemian Rhapsody where none of Freddie Mercury's flaws or drug abuse was ever really mentioned. I think the biggest misconception people have for this film is that it glorifies drugs when it absolutely does not. I mean, once they get into the Chelsea Hotel in the last half of the film, it is dark, it is morbid, it is bleak, and you can picture the smell in your head just by looking at the scene. Cox does not outright tell you whether you should like these people or not. You can sympathise with these people due to their age and addiction, but at the same time, they are both flawed, volatile, possessive, violent, and even annoying at times. The film doesn't shy away from showing Sid's violent and excessive tendencies, and just on the basis of the way that Sid and Nancy are characterised both as individuals and in their relationship, I do think it is a fairly accurate representation of the relationship. While nothing is specifically outright said about why these two embark on this drug-fueled journey, you can definitely make the assumption through very clever writing and performance that Sid is shown to be hiding his insecurities and mental health problems via drugs and the rock and roll lifestyle, always wanting to impress and have attention, which is accurate to the events that we know. Whether that's attacking people at gigs and also the scenes of Sid self-harming in front of a crowd in America. He was just a kid at the end of the day who got strung in the deep end. Both Sid and Nancy were pretty much exactly the same, and they were perfect for each other, but it all ended in disaster, which is really the tragedy of this story. A lot of this is down to the two main performers, Gary Oldman and Chloe Webb. Both are electric, especially Gary Oldman. Considering he had no interest in playing Sid, he still brought his absolute A game. He brings the right amount of hardness, silliness, and vulnerability to the role. Chloe Webb is just as grating and annoying as Nancy was accused of being in real life, so it's a pretty accurate performance. And despite Nancy's death scene being quite questionable, their performances and dialogue really sell it and make it such a powerful and memorable scene. You always get the feeling in the film that despite the drugs and toxicity, they really did love each other at the end of the day. I always found the metaphor at the end with Sid and Nancy taking a taxi after her death to be quite a bittersweet depiction of the tone of their relationship. I also feel like that's what makes this film so tight when compared to other biopics, is that it focuses on one aspect of the band, and that is their relationship, which probably only lasted for maybe about a year, whereas most biopics will take you through the whole life story of an artist. This is based solely around maybe a year's worth of time. There isn't any reference to Sid's childhood with his heroin addicted mother, but simply a study of how drugs and toxic relationships and can strip everything away from you. There is a balance of tone that Cox really nails here. I mean, the first half of the film is pretty much like a comedy, showing the punk scene and all of its excessive glory, but by the time it gets to the Chelsea Hotel, it just becomes a completely dirty and depressing film, and that's shown within the lighting. I mean, the lighting in the first half of the film is so bright and so high key, and actually Roger Deakins' cinematography is actually quite colourful, but by the second half the film is just absolutely drenched in shadows and almost completely desaturated. Alex Cox brings the right amount of energy to this film through its editing and its music choices. I mean, it is clear that he absolutely loved the punk scene. I mean, the style, the fashion, the sets, the music choices all fit in really well to that time period. There is even a pretty fantastic and hilarious recreating of a scene from the Rock and Roll Swindle where Sid does his version of My Way by Frank Sinatra. In the end, Sid and Nancy might not be the best retelling of the Pistols, and that's putting it lightly. You know, if you want to hear the facts, then, you know, go watch the Filth and the Fury documentary or the many documentaries on Sid Vicious. But if you want to see just a really great drama based upon these two characters, then this film is incredibly powerful, mostly just because these two people are shown to be real human beings. The performances, the direction, the dialogue between these two people are just incredible throughout the film. Maybe my love for this film is due to the fact that I first watched it when I was first getting into the Pistols, so I didn't really know much about the band, and this was kind of the gateway into that because I've always been a huge film fan. So this is kind of the film that got me into the Pistols. It wasn't until, you know, after I watched the film that I actually started to learn more about them. So I'm definitely going to be interested to see how this film compares to the new series Pistol. I mean, obviously, I imagine Sid and Nancy's relationship is going to be explored in a couple of the episodes, but probably not to the degree that this film does it. But I'm still interested to see how both projects compare in terms of tone and accuracy. So that'll be it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.